Blessings and best wishes to all. Welcome to the panel, Wellness and Campaign Culture. We can and must do better. I'm Reggie Hubbard. I'm here to be in community with my nibblings in the struggle, people who I've worked with in all aspects of campaign culture. Because y'all, I mean, just to keep it 100, we can and must do better. Like, we're still in the pandemic. We won the election in 2020. And number one, people still acting like we lost, but that's another story. Like, number two is that for the primacy and the importance of the issues that we have at hand, we've got to take better care of ourselves. The people who are on the other side of us philosophically are well funded, well rested, and apathetic to the causes that we care about. And we running ourselves into the ground. Like, please tell me how that makes sense. You know, I'm all ears. Number one, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I did it the wrong way before, right? You know, I used to have bourbon and cigarettes for breakfast during campaigns. I used to curse people out for lunch and wondered why I felt so terribly. And as a manager, I took better care of my people, but I didn't really take good care of myself. And the purpose of this panel is to have a real honest discussion. For those of you who know me, this should not come as any surprise, but for those of you that don't know me, you'll see real quick that I keep it mad real. We got to do better, right? Like the importance of it's not only about the stakes of the 2022 election, it's about the stakes of our movement, right? We can't continue to welcome people into the movement, run them into the ground, burn them out, and then wonder why we still aren't making any progress. You know, can I get a witness on that? Like, this shit is mad crazy. So like, today we have a cross sampling of some of my dear ones in the movement from all aspects of the movement. So from executive director to organizing, like lead field general on the front lines of reproductive justice. So we have everyone here from different aspects of the movement to talk about how we can and must do better. So in terms of introduction, I'm Reggie Hubbard, he, him, his in the DC metro area. I've done all aspects of this game, y'all. Like, I've worked on presidential campaigns. I was Bernie Sanders' executive producer in 2015 and 2016, produced his concession at the Democratic Convention. And I'm one of the few people in this game that is a graybeard in this hustle, and am able to speak to this from both sides of the issue. One is that, like I said, I worked 18 hours a day and smoked cigarettes and drank bourbon for breakfast and weighed 340 pounds and didn't go to the doctor, because, like, why would you do that, right? Like, so I've been there. And so luckily for me, 7 years ago, I had an awakening and started practicing yoga and became a Buddhist practitioner and was able to serve in the heart of the resistance against Donald Trump from a peaceful way, to be able to take care of myself and serve people from that peace, as opposed to running myself into the ground and wondering why people didn't want to talk to me, right? So I come at it from both sides, and since I come at it from both sides, I seek the middle path. So without further ado, I'd like to open up the discussion with my brother Justin, who is the executive director of the Blue. I always say it wrong, Justin. Blue, you're muted.
Blue Leadership Collaborative.
So I always say Blue Zinc, which is not cool. So Blue Leadership Collaborative. And Justin and I have been in this game for quite some time. But most importantly, Justin is on the leading edge of revamping culture from the executive director perspective. Like, he and I have had numerous conversations about how not to do it. And what I love most about my brother Justin is that, like, he is not only like talking about it, he's walking the talk. And so for those of you who are in managerial positions that think that you can't do it, number one, stop tripping. Number two is, like, hear what Justin and I are going to say about how you can, from the top down, incorporate aspects of wellness. So Justin, welcome, love and grace to you. Great to see you, and thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you, Reggie.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about your work and the aspects of the ways that you are seeking to enable, empower, and treat campaign workers as people as opposed to chattel.
Yeah, for a long time in campaigns, I've been doing this now for 16, 17 years. I can remember one of the first stories I heard about someone that is one of the most renowned political professionals. At the time, I started in New York City and I was coming off of being a teacher, which was a completely different lifestyle. But I was young and I really wanted to be in politics. So I think everyone knows when you're young, you will do anything and everything
Right.
to rise in this profession. That's just how you're kind of taught. And, I learned that this gentleman in particular became very renowned in New York City because he would sleep in his campaign office. So I said, I'm gonna do just that. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna sleep in my campaign office. Everyone's gonna know how serious I am about this work, and then that's going to get me to where I need to be. Which was one of the dumbest decisions I probably made in my entire professional career, because not only was I hurting myself. I was also setting a very poor example for the staff that I was managing at the time. And while my direct manager may have been impressed, I had staff that were not making it to election day because they were literally physically breaking down during Packet Land, which again, we don't have to worry about anymore. But if people remember Packet Land, you were up all night the day before election putting together walk packets, right? Again, just torturing yourself, creating unnecessary trauma. It is. I currently lead an organization that focuses on training managers. And something that, and these are managers that are people of color, they are folks that identify as queer. They are women. These are people that come from impacted communities, and their drive is real. They want to do well, and they have done well. But something that I noticed along the way was they were not treating themselves right, right, and it was something that became very important to me because I think back to how I treated myself, mainly before I met Reggie, and it wasn't good. I can remember passing out 4 days after election day because my body just crashed, and my then girlfriend, now wife, had to call an ambulance to come and get me, which was hugely embarrassing, right? And totally unnecessary. So around the time that I met Reggie, I began this journey to try to figure out how we as leaders in this space can encourage our folks to take care of themselves with the hope of not only making sure they make it to election day, but with the hopes of keeping them in this ecosystem, this progressive ecosystem, so that they can continue to do the good work that we need them to do, and in fact, stay in the pipeline and grow to get to the levels where they have more and more responsibility and they're making decisions. But none of that happens if you're breaking down after election day. So during my conversation with Reggie, and I can remember this, it was like 3 years ago, I think, in Philadelphia, my
Mm-hmm.
hometown in Net Roots.
Mm-hmm.
I said to Reggie, I really want to figure out how to do a better job of taking care of myself, and actually emulating self care for my staff. And at that moment, Reggie started talking to me about his yoga practice. I started talking to him about some of the things that I wanted to do, including going to therapy, right? Including being more consistent about going to the gym in the morning, which I do now. Almost on the daily basis, but also figuring out ways to really make sure that my staff, who were hard drivers at the time, there were more than 2,000 of them. This was at another organization, and they were all wonderful field organizers, trying to figure out how we could treat them better. And lo and behold, the pandemic happened. And when that happened, I reached out to Reggie and I said, we have to figure out what we can do. So we started to do some yoga, essentially, countrywide, across all 7 states of my organization. And you will be surprised not only how many people showed up, but how many people actually made it a daily practice of theirs without Reggie, because they knew that during that particular time, they needed to figure out how they could do something inside of their house that was not work, right? That was not focusing on parents and children and all the loved ones in their lives that they were daily worried about. And I moved to this organization, and because of what Reggie was able to do with those managers, I mean, excuse me, with those staffers, we literally, when we were training our managers before they went to go and manage their high level races, we actually had a training on how to take care of yourself and model self-care, right? Something I had never seen in the training before. And I think all of our managers, again, we're talking about Black and brown people, we're talking about women, we're talking about people who identify as queer, people who are in this space because they come from impacted communities and often feel the policies and the ebb and flows of campaigns differently because they're in survival mode, right? Like they're fighting for their communities. So we taught them how to take care of themselves, and they got so much better. And I was so impressed by them. And this has just become a staple of our training, and we're going to make sure we have it moving forward.
So what I love about that is that one, like I'll never forget that conversation at Netroots, right? Like, you know, that was just a delightful experience. And that too, well, the other thing is that like y'all so when we talk about these things, so trust me, like when I was like when I did my yoga teacher training during all the resistance. I did like 700 hours of training while like flipping the house, impeaching the president, and all this other crazy stuff. So I was the only one really like out there repping like that, you know what I mean? But it only takes one person
That's
repping
right.
mad hard to like influence people to be like, what about this? I mean, because none of us start this work to run ourselves into the ground and feel like shit. If you do, please call me and we can work out a therapy situation for you, right? Like, but like none of us get involved. We get involved in this work because we care and we want to make the world a better place.
Right.
But I'm here to tell you that wanting to make the world a better place to the detriment of yourself is a net negative. And we're going to talk about it in toward the end of the conversation about how we unlearn these destructive habits, because like some of them are so ingrained in us that we aren't even aware of it. So Justin, thank you. And I'll bring you back on in a moment. Lacey, I want to switch to you to talk a little bit more about where, so Justin talked about it from a leadership perspective and infusing it from the top. I want you to talk a little bit about it from like the actual activist perspective, right? So like so tell us a little bit about your story and how you have gone from like hardcore campaigner that didn't care about you to actually having a consulting gig that helps people with stress management as we do this important work.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for bringing me on for the conversation, Reggie. I think I came into it a lot in the same way that Justin says that he did, where so I've also been working on campaigns for about 18 years. And just like you, we started out with I'm going to work in the office all the time. I'm going to be the first one there, the last one to leave. I'm going to mainstream coffee. And I'm just going to, knock all the doors, talk to all the people. I'm going to be the MVP. And every time after an election cycle, I would crash. And so for me, I have an autoimmune disease. Excuse me. I also have a cold. So on top of that, but I have an autoimmune disease. And so my crashes after every election cycle would be severe. And so in I think it was 2012, after the 2012 election cycle, I actually ended up having to be on disability for a year while I was going to the hospital getting transfusions once a month because I had just worn myself down. And so, like you, my first real foray into self-care was a yoga practice. And through that, I went through my yoga teacher training in 2018 while I was the caucus director for the House of Delegates Democrats here in West Virginia. And we broke the Republican supermajority. I graduated with my teaching degree 2 weeks later, and 2 weeks after that, I got married. And the only way I was
Wow.
able to juggle all of those things in a single election cycle or year or whatever was that I was taking the time for myself to make sure that I was feeling balanced. And so for me, a lot of the gateway practices, if you will, are actually basic survival skills. So a lot of times what we think about when we think about stress is we think that it's a psychological thing, right? We think that it's because we've got too much to do or because we care so much about this issue that we are just constantly having to validate ourselves and the issue. But stress is also a biological function. It is actually the alarm bell that our body is sending out that says, hey, you are doing something that must mean that we are in danger. So you have not had any water to drink today. You've only drank coffee. That must mean that we have moved someplace that has no available water source and we are going to die. This is a stressful situation. SOS. We are not getting the sleep that we need. This must mean that we are in danger. There is something out there that is making it so that we have to be aware and awake for 20, hours out of a 24-hour period, we are in danger. SOS, help. So just simple things like for every cup of coffee you drink, drink a cup of water, get the sleep that you need, eat on a regular basis. The the first self-care tool that I ever bought was a toaster. And it wasn't like a toaster oven, it wasn't a toaster slash air fryer. It was just one of those like 2-slice toasters that I took to the campaign office because it meant that I ate breakfast every morning. Because I could make toast or I could make an English muffin. And, I was still eating at my desk, which, like I said, baby steps, right? Making sure that we're eating. So I think when you start thinking about the things that your body actually needs to function, once you start getting better at that and start making sure that you are prioritizing those things, then we can start moving into the more advanced levels of self-care. So things like our yoga practice or mindfulness or any of those other things that you might want to bring on.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'll also say, look, this is not no infomercial for yoga. Like yoga is what worked for me. Meditations what worked for me. I know for some people it's kind of spooky and tricky. But so this is not and I welcome you to my yoga class because we have a great time and I know what I'm doing. But like this is not an infomercial for yoga. Like it's an invitation for you to consider the means that you can take better care of yourself because like the thesis so think of this as a benevolent and compassionate intervention, right? Like we got to stop. It just doesn't make sense. Like I'm speaking to Swing Left San Francisco next week, and they brought me on because they're like, we're unhappy, and I was like, hi, I'm Reggie. I'm from the East Coast. I'm gonna be mad real. Like, how you gonna be unhappy when you won, yo? Like I don't understand that. Like we have a trifecta. Like yeah, it's a governing issue, but like there are opportunities to negotiate. Like we don't. There's power that we won because we organized and effectuated the result. So please tell me how you upset by that. Like I really don't understand that. Like, but it comes from like the grind mentality. Like I have to do this and like work, 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 work. Right? Like what about play? Like why can't we play? Why can't we have fun while we do this? One story I'll share before we go to Shreya is that like before the pandemic hit, so I was super, super, super involved in the impeachment experience, and so basically poured my soul into that. And March 2020 for me was supposed to be like an experience in like Shangri-La, right? So I was going to go to like, this retreat and this retreat, and like pour water back into my cup. Didn't really work out that way, but like because I was at home, I was able to implement some of my self-care practices. But I went on this retreat in Honesdale, Pennsylvania, to the Himalayan Institute, and someone I didn't even know was like, "Can I have a conversation with you?" And like I was vexed, right? Because like I had been in the impeachment situation from when Rashida Tlaib said, "Impeach the mother." Like that was my party that came out of my budget. And like I was like intimately involved in the organizing and the strategic guidance of that experience. So when the Senate did what it did and complicitly supported the Orange Monster, like I was just like, okay, cool. Like so, even I was a little bit like, but I was just tired. Like I still slept. Like I still made sure I did something for myself. I had water. Like it was tricky because in the impeachment hearing, if you got up to use the bathroom, you would have to lose your seat. So like I didn't really drink as much water as I should have, but whatever. Um, but this guy comes up to me and he was like, "So you're pretty passionate, right?" I was like, "Where are we going with this, man?" Like, okay, I mean, sure, right? He was like, "So might I offer you a suggestion?" I'm like, "What you got, man? I'm all ears. Like, I'm at the retreat. I don't know you, but like, we're kindred, so cool." He was like, "So rather than looking at your work as a fight, like, could you look at it as a dance?" And I'm like, hmm. Y'all think about it from a promotion perspective. It's easier to recruit people to come to a party, right, than to come to a fight, right? So like that is how over the pandemic, when everything was online, that's why all my stuff was super fun and free because I'm like, yo, like let's have fun as we do this important work. Yes, you're tired, but like, can we have a smile on our face while we do this important work as opposed to her? So again, a recruiting tool, like it's easier to recruit someone to come to a party and a dance than for a fight. And like, you know, you can do what we talk about in like yogic circles or Buddhist circles. You can dance with swords, you know what I mean? And like cut away ignorance. But like fighting, like that's kind of boring. But like dancing with swords, like is playful, but it's also it effectuates the desire that you hope for, as opposed to like, oh, everyone like everything's so miserable. Let's be miserable together. Yikes! Like ain't nobody got time for that. Especially now when we won and like we are doing things right, like and we're doing the things that we hope for. Then let's think about it. 4 years ago, none of us thought that this was possible and we're doing it. So let's reimagine how we take care of ourselves in the context of that. So I want to shift now to Shreya because like she and I have a delightful relationship, and what I love about her is that she basically was like, we need to take better care of ourselves, and I'm gonna go to like our management and make this happen, right? You know what I mean? Everyone's talking about this. I'm gonna be about it. So if y'all follow the arc of the conversation, we have an executive director that's doing it from the top down. Lacey talking about how we take care of ourselves. And for those of you who are workers, you can go to your management and being like, I don't think you're doing things the right way. Here is how we can take better care of ourselves because we're organizers, right? We speak truth to power. That doesn't just mean we speak truth to power externally. Sometimes you got to talk to your people, your bosses, your managers, and be like, I think we need to do this. How can we make this happen? Right? Doug, I like that progressives are better than dancing than conservatives. that's just science. Right. I appreciate that. So, dear Shreya, please introduce yourself to the space and talk a little bit more about like how you organized an opportunity for people to take better care of themselves, and how that can be a playbook for people to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Reggie, for having me on. And I feel like a seedling in between such well rooted trees here. So it's a true honor to be on this panel with y'all. My name is Shreya Singh Hernandez. I use she, her pronouns. I'm at Planned Parenthood Federation of America. I'm on their organizing, electoral, and campaigns team doing data analytics work. And for the 2020 cycle, I was able to launch and manage Planned Parenthood Votes uh, inaugural Asian American and Pacific Islander voter outreach program, which was a true honor to me as an Indian American myself. So I think this conversation is so timely, and in the midst of that, Reggie really stepped in and helped my team achieve some level of mindfulness about of wellness, etc. And I really appreciate how the conversation today is moving from community care to self care and back. And I think the last 2 years now, almost, this pandemic time has really deepened my sense of advocacy. And I've worked in advocacy, but truly advocating for myself as a worker, advocating for my fellow employees, advocating for the space that I'm in to be a sustainable working space. I was proud to be part of the DC union, shout out SEIU Local 500. So it was an amazing time to be in leadership there and really face these challenges that the pandemic brought head on. But before that, even during the election cycle, we just noticed that there was a lot of meh, there was just a lot of like burnout. There just wasn't a way to describe what we were feeling. There was just a lot of fog. And thank you to Yasmin and Raji for introducing me to Reggie as someone who could help us. And so I proposed a plan together with Yasmin to get Reggie to come be a speaker, use our team training budget, our team retreat budget, a portion of that to have Reggie teach us how to use yoga, use mindfulness and wellness and movement to de-stress, to regulate our stress, to even just work out, some of the physical ailments that come with working, 9 to 5, we know that's a myth, 9 to whenever. Just, working out your arms and fingers and your back and your posture from sitting or standing or doing whatever you're doing throughout the day. Reggie really helped make sure that we had the skills to be able to unwork that stress and disconnect. And I've been practicing yoga since I was a child. I can't remember when I started because it's just part of my family and how we do things. But I think the turning point here for me was truly realizing that those aren't two separate things, that my work can be a yogic practice as well, and that it needs to be a form of self and community care. That, the way Reggie described it, it was, um, I used to see things as separate, works here, and then I go home and I relax. But the way that Reggie described yoga and movement, and movement building was very integrated in a way that really spoke to what we needed in that moment. Um, so I think the biggest things for me this year are sustainability. And thank you, Reggie, for infusing some of that and making sure the work is joyful and not just, a fight. I know it's ironic. I have a pair of boxing gloves back here, but it's sustainable. It's not ending anytime soon, unfortunately. So, just relying on my coworkers, my colleagues, and people in the movement like Reggie to make sure that we are creating a sustainable movement that serves us today, that serves us tomorrow, and so much farther beyond. I think one last thing that I would like to leave with is I've been blessed with amazing managers, amazing leadership that have supported me in seeking out, and paying for, and bringing on people like Reggie. One of my managers gave me this book, and I'm not paid by them or anything, but I highly recommend this book. It's called Burnout: The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle, and it really talks about a lot of the things that we're mentioning here today, and how physical movement is not just like an aesthetic choice. Justin, thank you so much for mentioning. I've been in the gym too, out of just a need to get out of my space. But physical movement is so important, and it's so important in unlocking the stress cycle. So my manager gave me this book. It was on my table today, and so I just like to share that with you. And thank you again for creating this space, for coming to talk to the employees at Planned Parenthood Federation of America, Reggie, and for inviting me to come speak with y'all.
Blessings and gratitude for the share. I'll also say this ain't no infomercial about me, right? Like, so meaning like I'm grateful for the kind words, but like I'm actually self-effacing, like so. But like, thank you for the words. I received them, and I want to talk about like, so shout out to the good managers that are out there too, right? Like, because good work often goes unsaid and understated, right? So shout out to the people doing good work, and blessings to those doing bad work, because like I said, we can and must do better, right? And so one thing before we go to Alexis, and then we'll open it up for questions for y'all. So for those of y'all who have questions, please put it in the chat, because this is for you, number one. Number two is that think we have got to figure out different ways to motivate ourselves than stress and fear and doom, right? Like the sky is falling. Okay, you know what else? The sun is also rising. So why can't we be inspired by beauty as opposed to like thinking of the sky? Further, the sky's not falling. The sky's falling. We wouldn't even really be able to like talk and stuff, right? So like, it's creating stress-induced norms that become like an opportunity for the body to like clench, right? Whereas when we talk about movement, when we talk about breath, when we talk about these sorts of things, number one, the body was designed to move. Like, it's the most amazing machine that we do not consider how intricate and beautiful it is. Number one. Number two, and perhaps most importantly, the body is the vessel through which we do the work. So if your car has a no gas, check engine light is on, and a flat tire, you like will go fix it, right? You're not gonna be like, damn, stupid car, like, damn it, like why is this car not working? Because it's a flat tire and like you ain't got no gas and like the engine light is on, right? So like, let us begin to view the vessel through which we do our work with as much sanctity as we view the work. Because if we're not healthy, we can't do the work. And if we're not healthy, the work will not, the body will sustain us, the work will not. Right? So if we sustain the body to do the work, then both will be sustained. Soapbox over for now. Dear Alexis, like, want to welcome you into the space because you and I had a beautiful conversation last week, and thank you for like indulging my last minute impromptu recruitment. But when we talked about unlearning and just the process that is, I mean, we are creatures of habit. We get into habits, and sometimes we aren't even aware of those habits. And especially in the context of movement work and movement building, for the long term, it will require us to like begin to believe some of the stuff that I just said. So honor the body, right? Like drinking water is cool, right? Like we must take care of ourselves with the same fervor that we look at these spreadsheets and talk about data analysis and vectors and like +6D district. Like, you know, like people be mad excited to talk about like spreadsheets, but when you talk about drinking water or like moving the body, they're like, I don't have time for that. Like give me the spreadsheet, yo. Like, yikes, right? So like data is important, but if you have a stroke and can't see, then of what use is the data, right? So I want you to talk a little bit more about like your work with unlearning and how that could be applied to the conversation we're talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Regine. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you all. I mean, unlearning, it's a journey, first of all,
Yeah.
right? It's a journey and recognizing that you're on it. You're not trying to get to a destination. That's not the work. You're just recognizing that there are multiple pathways to the work that you need to do. And sometimes it's realizing, well, what is that? And a lot of you have already mentioned examples of what you needed to do by not sleeping in your office and what it was exhibiting to your others. That was unlearning. You realized what it was doing to your body, but also what and how it was impacting others, right? And so it's recognizing the importance of what is it that I've been doing? Let me push pause for a moment. Let me think about that. Am I going about this the right way? Am I practicing things that I've internalized? How often do I choose myself? And unlearn little by little, gracefully. We don't show ourselves enough grace as it is. Sometimes we don't even know how and what that means, but we extend it. We extend it, right? Um, and so I think it's taking a step back and recognizing the importance of your human first, right? Um, that you are in perfect beings, that you are going to do your best, the best way that you know how and however you can, but also stepping back even further and realizing and recognizing the assumptions that you're making about yourself, your work. I think it's about protecting your yes by saying no sometimes, right? So creating these boundaries and realizing that it's not going to, the sky will not fall. It's going to be okay. It's going to be all right, right? And giving yourself that compassion. I think a lot of times we need to, as a part of my unlearning journey, I recognize the importance of in doing that, I needed to heal. I need to recognize all the things that I have been practicing and probably repeating that were serving me no purpose, right? It wasn't filling my cup. So you have to think about what is it that's giving you joy, right? That's fueling your engine. Um, and is it serving you in the way that it should as you're protecting your body and your mind? And I also have to say, shout out to Reggie again. I know this is not, but that's what I realized in my program. It was like, we are, and my advocates that I work with in our fellowship are on the front lines every day. All we know is go, 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 right? What fire has to be put out next, right? And I said, how often do we realize we need to just sit back and heal? Sit back and just recognize that. How often do we tell ourselves, job well done?
Wow, right.
Stop, one moment. You just did that. Give yourself flowers. How often? We don't, because we are on to the next. That's an example of some unlearning you need to do, right? And this is why we keep going and we get burned out because there's so many fires that need to be put out, but we also think that we're the ones that have to do it. And it's important to know that it's not all yours to bear. It's not all yours to carry. And so when I was looking for the work, I said, I need to make sure I'm creating the space for my fellows to heal and unlearn and unpack. We need to create a safe container for them because they're out there, they're doing this work, but they have, like, we need to make sure we're taking a step back and checking in with ourselves and holding ourselves accountable. And when you, and so here's another couple things. I'm going off, but I'm coming back to you, Reggie. When you recognize, and you all can do this, everyone that's listening, you all, I want you, if you can, or just imagine hats, a lot of hats. You're 16, 19, you're okay. Recognize hats. And then I want you to label them. Give them titles, give them names, give them your titles, right? Husband, father, preacher, spouse, partner, yoga instructor. Give your name hats. Don't give your hats names, right? They're your hats. You wear them, right? Now you have them, right? Have you visualized all these hats that you have? You got them? Take them off. Take them off, right? Yes. And ask yourself when you're looking in the mirror or when you're doing this self-study, who are you without those hats? Who are you? Not father, not husband, wife, partner, spouse, manager. Who are you? Not an organizer. Who are you? And I think that is when I recognized the journey and the work that needed to be done and the unlearning I had to do. I had to check in and realize the narratives I believed about myself and what I was told and say, okay, it's okay to take a step back and challenge that, unlearn that, and relearn. I can stop because I know I can keep going. But then I reached out to Reggie and I said, I need your help with my fellows. I want to create a space for them to do some of this work in unlearning. Can you do that? And I'll say a part of Reggie's, and you all probably know this, yoga was, he shared a story. He shared his journey with us. It was the first time I've ever been in yoga where we didn't get right into it. He shared himself. And my fellows and in my staff were like, what's happening? We let it happen, we let it happen. And after it all clicked, because we don't unpack our why. We don't unpack our why. We dive right into it. You go to the gym, you go into yoga, you go, why? What are you trying to unpack? Right? Why are you doing this work? And I think it's okay to ask yourself, and then it's okay to sit in those feelings and feel that guilt. It's okay. Feel your feelings. Don't stay there. Be there. Mm-hmm. And then go ahead with your unlearning journey.
I mean, talk about flowers. Like, I give flowers to all y'all for your heartfelt shares, because like these are the conversations that do not happen in our space, right? It's always like, so what campaign are you on? Or like, what are your metrics for like discussing blah, blah, blah. Like, we don't talk from the heart, but we work from the heart. So think of that dissociation, right? Think about the stress and drama that dissociation augurs, right? I'm writing a book, y'all. So that's where like dissociation and augur and all these other things, like these words are just popping out of Black Hippie's mouth. But like when you work from the heart, but don't speak from the heart, that creates dissonance in the mind. And like that dissonance lends itself to like just losing your way somewhat. Right. So like, I'm grateful for all of you for your heartfelt shares and for wanting to not only talk about doing better, but doing better and like showing the way for others to consider what that looks like from a multifaceted perspective. So I don't see any questions in the chat, but I want to open it up to all of you. So if anyone wants to offer any reflections on what they've heard, I have a few questions, but we've all shared from the heart. And so welcome to Buddhist Teacher. We're in Sangha now. So like part of Sangha is sharing from the heart based on reflections that you've heard. So Justin, I'll begin with you. Like, is there anything that you care to reflect upon that landed with you, that just sits with you, or just anything in general?
I mean, the one thing I heard time and time again is accountability, like hold yourself accountable, but also community, right? And again, we're trying to unlearn, to Alexis's point, and we all know that we were taught these bad habits by other people, right? Like part of the rites of passage, I guess, in campaigns is that you have to relive the trauma that your manager went through at some point in time, right? And unbreaking that cycle is really important. And for me, community is the key to doing that, right? Because two things, like I am part of a group called Executive Directors of Color, which is an amazing group. You're talking about people like Chris Fields Figueroa, Karundi, Alvina Ye, Jen Epps, just a whole bunch of badasses, Maurice Mitchell from WFP, a whole bunch of badasses. And we were together at a retreat. It was a resilience retreat. And we made a pact with each other at that retreat to talk to each other about how we were treating ourselves, right? Giving ourselves grace. If we had an actual event and someone didn't show up, not getting mad at that person because you never know what's going on in that individual's life, right? Just making sure that we're supporting each other. And that's as simple as us sharing strategy and tactics, or literally just sending a simple message asking a person, how are you doing today, right? Because a lot of people don't even ask that simple question. The other thing when it comes to community, and that's my community that has really helped me. So I wanted to recreate it with these managers that we're working with at Blue Leadership Collaborative. And you would, I'm not surprised now, and I'm actually very proud of them, but the way that they love on each other is something that we wanted. It's something that we hoped for. I couldn't imagine it being as good as it is, right? And they just went through a very tough cycle in Virginia where they were managing the top races at the House of Delegates level. Some of them lost. But when I saw them, they were upset. We're all competitive. We want to win, right? And we want to win for the right reasons. But that community held them down in a way that when we had our graduation, all of them saw the bigger picture, which is their individual development as managers, right? Going on to manage bigger and better things, but also their responsibility to each other and holding each other accountable, taking care of each other, making sure everyone's utilizing the best practices, and protecting the program for the people that come behind them. And that's something that I'm immensely proud of. But I can remember managers on this cycle, one in particular who needed to have surgery. And she said, I'm gonna put this surgery off until after the election. I don't have to do this now. And I just thought to myself, wow, this is something I would have done 10 years ago. It's really important for not only me to say no to her, but to make sure other people that are aware of this in our community are also saying no to her. And we did. We rallied around her. Ultimately, it was much worse than she thought. So thank God she went and got that surgery, right? Just think what would have happened if she didn't. She wouldn't have made it to election day. She was critical to that campaign winning, and she wouldn't be moving on to another campaign where she's going to manage it in a very culturally competent way. So community is just hugely important to me in trying to make sure we are all holding each other accountable and making sure we're treating ourselves well.
I mean, thank you for that enlightened share, brother. And thank you also for, she couldn't get the surgery if she didn't have health care. So thank you for going out of your way to make sure that your managers have health care and are compensated fairly and all the things, right?
And access to therapy and everything that they need. Everything that they need.
And that that's again, that's why when I thought of this panel, you're the first person I was like, if I get Justin, that's the anchor that I can build the program around, because you're doing this in real time. So here are your flowers, man, for creating the community. You are an executive director talking about creating a culture where people love on each other, right? You know what I mean? In politics, right? You know what I mean? Because y'all know that I'm in several worlds. So I'm in the movement space, I'm in the yoga space, I'm in the Buddhist space. I expect that stuff in the yoga space. Let's love on each other. And I'm kind of the hard ass in the yoga space. I'm can we heal the world too and stop loving on each other? Can we go serve people and stop being so goddamn self-important? So that's in the yoga space. I expect that. But to hear you articulate that in this space is revolutionary, beautiful, and transformative. So hear that, feel that, and I hope you get emotional because you deserve it, right? You deserve to hear praise for the work that you're doing, because it is revolutionary in the way that we want all of our work to be revolutionary. So blessings and gratitude for that. Lacey, do you have any? We do have one question in the chat, and we'll get to that, but I want to have space for reflections. Lacey, you're next.
Yeah. Do you mind if I actually reflect back to Ellie?
Yeah, no, for sure. Go for it. Yeah, for sure.
So Ellie asked the question, how do you begin to bring these philosophies to a campaign that is toxic or not interested in self-care? And I think the way that we begin that is by practicing it ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of what we've been talking about on this panel is sort of flipping coins, right? We see the one side of it. We see, okay, well, this culture doesn't want us to do something or isn't supporting us in doing it. And you flip it and it says, but I can do that myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and the great thing about that, and that personal responsibility for yourself, because we are the vessels through which our work is done, is that if you've ever been in an environment where somebody walks into your office space and you immediately like feel stressed out, like the stress is just rolling off of them and it affects everybody in the room. The same thing can happen when you walk into a room and you are calm and collected and peaceful and you are protecting your energy. And so when you walk into a room like that, people look up and say, I want what that person has. Like, give me some of that. And so if you make it your mission to be that person who walks into a room as the best version of yourself, the most well-loved, cared for version of yourself, then other people are going to look to that and say, I want what they have. And then you can be the person that starts bringing it to the campaign. And again, the flip side of that is if you do all of this inner work and you are trying and you are being that person, and this campaign continues to try to knock you down or get you out of that peace, that might be an environment you need to get yourself out of. And that's really hard for us to hear as people who care deeply about the issues and the movements that we're working towards. Not all of the environments are going to be supportive environments. And so it's up to us to find the supportive ones or to build them. And it's up to us to know that when we are in a situation that is bad for us, we need to get out of it and find a different situation.
And not be afraid to do so, right?
Yeah, because you're not failing the movement, you're not failing the issue, you are not holding something down by protecting yourself. And that's something that all of us deserves to hear and all of us deserve to feel, is that our peace, our health, our energy, our mental capacity is worth protecting, because you
Yeah.
have so much to offer the world and you can only do it if you are functioning at the highest level of yourself. So,
And giving yourself permission to do so.
yep.
Yeah.
And not feeling guilty about it.
Right. Absolutely.
100%.
Lacey, so blessings on that. One quick anecdote. And like many of y'all know, I resigned my job in February and like have been like I left the hustle, but I'm still in the game, as evidenced by this panel on some OG shit. But like one of the biggest compliments I got during all of the resistance work that I did was from Ayanna Presley. So Sister Ayanna was just like, if y'all know Ayanna, Ayanna don't suffer no fools and don't take no shit. So like she was just like, Reggie, let me tell you something about you. So I'm like, oh my God, what did I do, yo? Oh no. Like, and she's all like, let me tell you something about you. I'm like, what is this, sis? She was like, brother, like you so cool that when you walk into the room, the blood pressure drops. And this is in the Congress. Right. And so like I was just like, you're just trying to make Yogi cry. Like you're just trying to make the Yogi cry because like I work so hard on my energy and like protecting myself and like boundaries that if I can walk into a stressful place such as Capitol Hill and people are like, whoosh, like who is that? Like that's exactly what you're talking about. And I didn't even know it because I was just putting so much work into myself that when she said that to me, I was just like, ooh, wow. Like I'm going to continue to do this because like if that is the impact I'm having on the hill in the resistance, then I got to model this so people can know that it's possible for all people, but especially BIPOC communities. Shreya, any reflections? Then Alexis.
Yeah, thank you so much again. I want to react to what Cass is saying in the comments.
Please, please.
Yeah, 100%. I think that no amount of, perks can make up for an equitable workplace, an equitable salary, a space where you feel like your work is being compensated fairly. And I think that's why labor work is so important because it truly brings these things into reality. And I think in the past year and a half, 2 years, we've really realized that the facades of some things like pizza parties and these kind of like perks that are great um, have kind of fallen away, and we're having to take a real hard look at what keeps people motivated, what keeps people retained, what keeps people at an organization doing sustainable good work. Lacey, I was really inspired by what you said about failure and how having an exit strategy doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means that you're finding a space that's better fit for you, that is more sustainable for you. I think exiting a role that you don't think is good for you is such a it's such a badge of honor because it shows that you have boundaries that matter to you, and I respect people so much that do that. And I try to practice that myself. If I'm volunteering for something, like I'm rolling off of union leadership now because one, I want to make space for new people, and two, I need to fill my own cup. I need to advocate for myself. I need to spend more time with my family. I need to do things that bring me joy and take that time back after, being proud of good work that I put in. And Lacey, or sorry, Alexis, one of the things that you mentioned spoke so much to me is that after you make your exit or after you transition, what are you left with if your role or your title is you're defined by the hat that you're wearing? And I've been thinking about that a lot lately in trying to manage my career, trying to grow, trying to be ambitious. How am I making sure that I'm not letting my role or my ambition become me? And how am I staying true to myself and letting go of these expectations that, in honesty, a white supremacy culture driven by
Mhm.
capitalism has provided me? That's the inheritance I have in this workspace. And I can't escape that. So the only way through is to unwork it. So thank you so much. I've learned so much from this conversation. And thank you again, Reggie.
Absolutely. Alexis, any reflections?
Yeah, no, I would just echo what you just shared. And I really also appreciate this conversation. I'm also learning so much. I'm taking notes as you are all speaking. Justin, to your earlier point about identifying your community, finding your people, right? That for me, how that's integral to healing, right? Is having that. So I really want to just lift that up again. Um, I would just say that a lot of the unlearning work and the journey is about healing. It's about cultural competence. It's also about acceptance, maybe divorcing something that you might believe in, you've been holding on to for a little too long. I remember when I first heard that, I was like, divorcing, right? I'm not thinking, I'm like, I need to bury that. Not to say divorcing, but I need to bury that, right? I need to divorce that feeling, that notion, that belief I might have about myself. And I would just say that this conversation just really rings true to a lot of what we've all really collectively shared about the importance of relearning, the work that needs to be done and how it's ongoing, and create creating sustainability plans as well, right? It's not a one and done,
Yeah,
right? What might work for you now may be a different path later. So just being open and flexible to that. I think to the earlier question about its environments and energies, I think to your point, Lacey, it's coming with that energy but also recognizing that that might take some time to nurture. You might have to cultivate that, right? So a lot of us are starting at different places. Um, being okay with that. And when you're in these toxic environments, understand that's not you. That's not your energy to carry. That's not you to bear. So it's okay to say yourself, or you can say out loud, depending on your environment, whatever you like to do. That's all you. That's not me. And believe that and know that and be confident in that. Um, and I love that you said energy, because oftentimes we don't recognize the how much that factors into how we show up, someone else's energy, right? So really, exercising that emotional intelligence and that sense of awareness around you is a part of the healing and growing work.
Yeah, beautiful reflections, one and all. Like I'm blessed by this conversation and just blessed by the community that we've created here, and like and think of this in the context of the service that we're offering the community, right? Like this is and shout out to Amy Pritchard. Amy was just like, Reggie, I want you to like curate a conversation that like shakes things up. I'm like, yeah, right. So like but thank her. I thank her for giving me autonomy to like create a heart-centered conversation about where we should go, and in the context of where we are now. So like love and gratitude to her for that. Justin, I want to give you the opportunity to respond to Cass's statement, given your perch and your purview, about practicality and like whether well-funded campaigns or groups can like, so just I welcome your comments on that.
Yeah, it doesn't take a well-funded campaign. I literally think it is top down, a really good manager and or leader, right? Leading in an inclusive way, making sure that they are setting the example by not staying in the office for 12 hours, right? By not getting mad when you don't see someone online, by not requiring every staffer on a campaign to come in 7 days a week and be there all damn day, right? Like those are just norms that you can create on your campaign as a leader, right? I also want to acknowledge something else, and I appreciate it what Lacey said, right? And what Alexis said, right? Divorcing yourself from a situation that may not be good is important. And I admire some of the people that have been able to do that. I also admire the people, and this is real for me because I don't know if I had the tenacity or ability to do this when I was a 25-year-old campaigner. I love the fact that young people speak up on campaigns now and say that this is not the way that we should be treated. We do not want to be treated this way, and we demand more, right? I love those people, and I they can be a headache sometimes. Let's be real, like it can be like it can get on your nerves, but if we are living our values right and thinking through ways to always make a person's journey a little less difficult than your own, especially if they look like you or come from the same background as you, then you should be willing and open to listen to those folks in your campaign that are telling you shit is not right and we got to fix this. And I was really hard-headed when I was a young manager, and I used to, bat them down at every chance. But I've grown older, I've gotten wiser, but I want to be honest. A lot of that is because young folks on staff speak up and hold me accountable, right? So while you should divorce yourself of bad situations, I would also say, don't be scared to challenge, right? Do it in a respectful way, but don't be scared to challenge situations that aren't up to stuff or aren't what they should be in a particular environment. That's really important that we allow for that. And as leaders in this space, we have to allow for our staff to do that. But again, this has nothing to do with the size of your budget, the size of your campaign. It has more to do with the makeup of the leaders on your team, right? And whether you all collectively are going to say, we want to create a campaign, we want to create an environment that is one that does not create unnecessary trauma for our staff. It is one that allows for people to see their value by making sure we're not just churning and burning and running through them and making sure that they just do the task without any input from them. No. That is the way of old. And frankly, I think if you do that now, you're going to find yourself on the bad side of a press story. And you should. You should.
Yeah, Justin, blessings for that and gratitude for that. And Sri, I want to say one thing. Like you talked about the inheritance of white supremacist culture. Let's just presence that for a second, right? Like, so the grind at all costs, like cancel this, I can get a new cog. Like, rather than viewing people's divinity and humanity, which should be the essence of our work as a progressive space, like divorcing ourselves or like sunsetting or getting rid of our attachment to norms that aren't ours. You know what I mean? Like, I know my history. Like, I am Nigerian and indigenous Cherokee, and there's Scotch Irish in there too, hence the light skin hue. We're a communitarian society. We're a communitarian people. Like we take care of each other. We know that the weakest among us should be the most revered, right? Like and serve with the most love and grace, right? So like that, why can't that be a campaign norm? Like, why can't the norm be hey, like, you're not doing so well. How can I be of service to you, as opposed to suck it up, get over it, the next call's in 5 minutes, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's, to Justin's point, it's within our culture, or it's within our power to change culture, because culture is made by people and norms and what we accept and the boundaries we either have or don't have. And Justin, I also want to say something to what you said, and then I'll open the space for closing remarks. And you said lessen the burden of those who are younger than us. What a beautiful concept, right? Like, what a beautiful concept to make the way lighter for those behind you, as opposed to, I had it hard, you need to have it hard too. Yikes, right? So like, thank you for presencing that, because like that's it evokes the concepts of stewardship, right? So especially in movement building, one of the things that I am most inspired by as I think about the venerated civil rights movement, is that they knew that they may not see the results they were fighting for. So in doing so, they created opportunities to make it easier for those who picked up the baton, either when they weren't doing it anymore or when they passed on. Right. So reinstating that level of stewardship for people who are behind you to lessen their burden. I mean, that's my whole vibe. Like, I'm like, look, I worked way too hard. And I say this when I talk about health and wellness. I was like, if you ever have to lose 85 to 90 pounds in your life, please don't put yourself through that. Like, that is a lot. Right. So like, hear my story, hear the graybeard's wisdom. Like, do not do that. That's why I'm so transparent and open-hearted, because it's like, that was brutal. And yes, I'm resilient and strong and wise, but the cost I had to pay for that resilience and wisdom, I don't want other people to have to do it. Just hear me tell a cool story, right? As opposed to just like the mind trap of, I'm the worst. Like, why did I smoke and drink? I should have ate better. Yeah. Like all that stuff. Hear these words that we're saying with you. Like, create an opportunity to lessen the burden of those behind you, as opposed to forcing them through the trauma that you went through. And Justin, you also mentioned that it's the rite of passage to like endure the trauma of your manager. Why can't it be the blessing of the manager to lighten the load of those who come behind them, right? You know what I mean? So why can't we be a little bit more enlightened, and give the gift of our wisdom to people, as opposed to passing our pain? Can you tell I was an extemporaneous debater? So closing comments, unless from the online fam, if y'all have any other questions, we'll hold space for that. But let's begin with Alexis for whatever closing comments you may have.
Yeah, thank you. I would just say thank you again. It's been a pleasure. I've learned a lot from all of you all. And again, I'll say again, I can't say enough. Um, as you're doing and as we're doing racial justice work, racial healing, as we're looking at this trauma that's being passed on, that, to your point, or how we're showing up, the dominant culture or dominant narrative that's been told of what we believe, what we might be doing, take a step back and just do some of that unlearning. Do some brainwashing. Recognize it, realize it, accept it, and then relearn. I do agree it's a bi-directional approach. I remain a student, and I think there's a level and importance of freedom in being that mindset. So gratitude to all of you, and thank you again for having me.
Absolutely. Blessings on your contribution to the space. Shreya, please.
Yeah, just reiterating all the gratitude I hope I've entered this space with, and it's an honor to speak with and amongst y'all. I think the biggest thing that I've come out with here is just re-examining our motives and our values. You know, many of these campaigns we're fighting for, we're working for things like equitable access to healthcare or a livable wage or whatever it might be to make someone's life better and easier and a well-lived life. And I think just extending that same sort of value to your coworkers is what it's all about. And I think here I have great examples of good people managers, but I would just like to say that people management is a skill in itself. And thank you so much for investing in that because it really makes a big difference. And, you know, I will take away for sure that I inherit the unprocessed trauma of my manager. That is hard hitting. Thank you so much for that wonderful nugget. And thank you so much for investing in your management because it truly makes or breaks someone's experience. So again, gratitude for this space. Thank you all. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Blessings and gratitude for showing up. Lacey, please.
Yeah, so I also want to say thank you both to the people on this panel, to Reggie for putting this panel together, also to everybody that's showed up, to whom a panel discussion about this type of thing was interesting. One of my favorite things, Reggie, that you say is that political people are people that have good hearts and bad habits.
Mm-hmm.
And so my wish for all of you is that we can establish the habits that are as good as our hearts. And if you need help with that, if you are in a place where you feel your community is not supporting that, I would like to offer that I will be your community. So you can find me on Instagram. My handle is right there in my name, or you can email me. It's my first name, period, my last name at Gmail. So let me know if I can help in any way. Thanks, Reggie.
Absolutely. And thank you for presenting that quote. Like that's if that ain't the truest, like I'm not saying like look at him, it's not what I'm saying, but like we have hearts of gold and habits of dirt. Right. So like can we have like hearts of gold and habits of platinum? Justin, please close.
I also want to say thank you to everyone on this panel. This has been amazing. Also, thank you, Reggie, for being such a leader in this space. It's hugely important that we have someone that is our North Star in this space, and you were certainly that. So thank you. You know, I think it's just important to say be kind to yourself and be kind to others. You know, every time, to Reggie's point, every time I want to pick up a cigarette like I used to, or drink too much like I used to, right? I think about not only am I being kind to myself as a 42-year-old husband, father, son, right? Making sure that I am here for my kids for the long term so that I can have an impact on their lives. I also think about the example that I'm setting for staff. And I think that that's really important that we make sure, particularly for staff that's coming from impacted communities, that has the passion and drive to do this work because it is their lives, right? Again, in survival mode, trying to make sure that people do not live their experience. Keeping those folks in this progressive ecosystem is immensely important to our overall success. And if we're not being kind to ourselves and being kind to them, we're going to have people at the top of this ecosystem that do not understand those communities because the folks that are impacted couldn't make it, right? And they could have if we'd have treated them a little bit better and have been more inclusive and had made sure we were giving them the tools to survive themselves. But if we don't, then we're going to have a homogenous power structure at the top of our progressive ecosystem that is not going to help us win any advocacy fights, any legislative fights, or any electoral fights. And that's not where we need to be. So let's make sure that we are all trying to be kind to ourselves and be kind to others and make sure that we can keep the people that we need in this progressive ecosystem so that we can see the change that we all so desperately need. So again, thank you, Reggie. I really appreciate this opportunity. And yeah, like Lacey, I'm open to speaking to anyone that has an interest in how we do things at Blue Leadership Collaborative or just in life. So thank you.
Absolutely, and I'll be brief in my commentary. I'll for once, right now. Deep gratitude to each of you for your heart, for your willingness to be of service, and your willingness to share at a time where I believe that the norms that have pervaded in the past are cracking. And so I grew up in the church, right? So like when Joshua went around Jericho, right, he saw cracks in the wall. And so I think this conversation is us like shouting and the walls come tumbling down, because these walls, they keep us from being kind to ourselves and kind to one another, are not enabling us to be like stewards of righteousness and love, which is what the progressive movement is about. It's about doing right, being kind, and loving. Like we don't talk about the L word in the progressive space unless you're Cornell West. show that shirt again, Alexis. All right, right. But like that's what it is. Like this is a movement based on love of self, love of others, and having that love transcend bad habits, hatred, and supremacist structures that need to go. Right. And so whatever vestiges of those supremacist structures that we hold, we need to have honest, heartfelt conversations to bow to them in a symbol of it's time for you to go. So thank you for what you thought you were doing, but it is time for you to go. And now that you are on the way out, let this love, let this kindness, let this opportunity of service unleash and do the work that it can do. And I'll close by saying this, like, we have a chance now to bring to the center of this movement a heart-centered compass that will be better stewardship for all of us. We work too hard to not have that heart-centered compass be our guide forward, as opposed to being like tethered backwards as we are with these supremacist norms. So I want to bow to each and every one of you, those who attended, to Lacey's point, who thought it not a waste of time to be in conversation and in community. And however I can be of service, Reggie Global on Instagram, or reginald.hubbard@gmail.com, or activepeaceyoga.com. However we can be of service, we're here for you. Thank you to the tech support in the back. I see your message. I used to be a producer. We cool. With time to spare, panel over and out. Love and grace.